Hi everyone, I'm going to cover the quadratic formula. This should be review for you. So basically, I'm going to go over one brief example. If you look at the quadratic formula, we have x equals to negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And I'm not requesting that you memorize this. You can always reference it, but there is a way to remember. All right, so when we look at the quadratic formula, what is the purpose of it? So one of the reasons we use the quadratic formulas, because when we have a quadratic equation, such as this, we may not always be able to factor it. So the quadratic formula helps us see to evaluate what the x is. Now, what does the x represent? The x represents the x-intercepts. So if we're looking at a graph, there could be three types of situations. So we can use the quadratic formula and end up with two real solutions, where this would be one of the solutions and this would be the other. In other words, where the graph crosses the x-axis. So those are x-intercepts. We also call them solutions. So you can see two of them. That would be two real solutions. So when you're using the formula, this is where you have the plus or minus. You'll probably end up with either two real solutions. Then we have one real solution. So this is what it would look like on a graph. And we call this actually a double root. It only touches the x-axis at one point. And then the situation could happen where we have no real solution. So what does that mean? You can see the graph does not touch the x-axis. So that means no real solution. So today we're going to practice either situation A or B, where you have two real solutions or one real solution. All right, so looking at the formula, I'm going to do one example. And again, to remind you that when we have an x-intercept, it means that y equals to 0. So here in our equation, which is in standard form, when we use our formula, you want to make sure that your equation is in standard form first before you identify the a value, the b value, and the c value. Once it is in standard form, then you can go ahead and plug it into the formula. So let's go ahead and look at the first equation, x squared minus 3x equals 6, and see, is it in standard form? So ask yourself, is this equation in standard form? If you said no, it is not, you are correct. So next we need to put the equation in standard form. So we need to bring this 6 over to the left side. So we were basically going to subtract 6 from both sides. So when we subtract 6, be careful to combine your terms. We end up with x squared minus 3x minus 6. And then what happens here? That equals to 0. All right. Now that our equation is in standard form, we are going to identify our a value, our b value, and our c value. So looking at this equation, you can see that the coefficient of x squared, there's nothing there, but it doesn't mean it's 0. What would a be in this equation? So if you said 1, you are correct. Our b would be negative 3, and the c value is negative 6. Once we have identified the three numbers, we're going to plug it into our equation. So we're going to say x equals negative b. Well, our b is already negative. So if you have a negative negative, that would be positive. So we have negative 3. I will just substitute everything into the equation right now. The square root, and now b squared, make sure you substitute it in parentheses, minus the 4 times 1 times negative 6, which is the c, all over 2a. And and I forgot to plug in a. What is a? It is actually 1. So it's all over 2 times 1. All right, so once everything is substituted into your equation, all you need to do is simplify. So my recommendation is, you, of course, use order of operations, but first always simplify inside the square root. And I would first simplify these 2 or 3 numbers and then combine it to the square. So what is -4 times 1 times -6? So whenever you have two negatives, you'll always result in a positive. And what is -3 squared? If you said 9, you are correct. So actually here what I end up with is 9. And -4 times 1 times -6 is plus 24. So all of this here is plus 24. So let's go ahead and rewrite it. We're going to have x equals, and I could already go ahead and say minus 3 is positive 3, plus or minus, and you can show a few steps, 9 plus 24 all over 2. We're going to simplify that. What is 9 and 24? 33. So x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 33 all over 2. Here is our answer. Now, what do you think from the above graphs this represents? Because we have 3 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 2. Now, sometimes you'll be able to reduce this fraction. You can't really reduce it with anything in this fraction. So remember, this means 2 solutions here. X equals 3 plus square root 33 over 2. Let me make this a little nicer. And x equals 3 minus square root 33 over 2. So here are our 2 solutions. What does that mean? It means on the graph that we saw over here, which type of solution do you think we have? Correct if you said this one. So we have one solution on the left and one solution on the right, and it crosses the x-axis in 2 places. So this is our final answer.